Jake Sully, the main character, introduces the film by describing his straightforward and contented existence with his family in Pandora as the chief. He states that he and his wife Neytiri had a total of 5 children. A human male named Spider, an adopted daughter named Kiri, 2 sons named Neytiri and Laak, and a daughter named Tuck. Jake continues by explaining that Kiri is the child of his beloved friend Grace, who passed away while aiding the Na'vi people in their struggle against humans. Spider was left behind after everyone else went back to Earth after the humans lost their battle. Jake claims that the kids interact and play well with one another. Jack says that although the kids are different colors and sizes, they all live together as a family. Because Spider is revealed to be the son of Colonel Miles Quaritch, the villain who nearly wiped out the Navis, Neytiri dislikes him. It turns out that Spider was too little to be sent back to Earth, so he was left behind on Pandora. On the other hand, Kiri is quite fond of Spider and feels a special connection to him. The human boy believes himself to be a member of the Na'vi people because he has lived among them his entire life. Neytiri and Jack are having a conversation one night when they both spot some bright spacecraft in the sky. The spaceships suddenly reach them and begin inflicting mayhem. The Amaticaya environment is set ablaze, causing extensive damage and the demise of numerous creatures. A squad of warriors armed with robotic artillery emerges from the spaceships and destroys what is left of the location. When Neytiri and Jake, who are observing from a distance, find out that it is an RDA spaceship carrying humans who are on their way to Pandora to colonize it and create another main operations station, they are astonished. The action then switches to one of the human research facilities, where a Colonel-like Na'vi clone has been successfully made by scientists. The information and memories gathered before his death have been fed to him. As a result, everything is known to the Colonel's clone, except for who and how he was killed. The scientists have created clones of other soldiers who were there during their previous invasion on Pandora, in addition to the Colonel. The Colonel and his troops are therefore determined to eliminate the Amaticaya and Jake in particular. In the meantime, Jake commands a Na'vi army toward the RDA train supply lines in an effort to stave off the invaders. He infiltrates it effectively and makes off with food and munitions. One of his sons, Laak, disobeys orders during this procedure and suffers an injury. Jake reprimands him and demands that he follow rules going forward. On the other hand, the Colonel runs into his superior, General Ardmore, who tells him about the Scouts, the Na'vi's flying allies. They are currently slowing down and attacking their helicopters. When the Quaritch learn of this, they devise a plan to invade the woodland where they had previously fought and collect some data on them. Along with his other friends, he soon makes it to the jungle. Sadly, Jake's kids are also having fun in the same woodland. Immediately after, the Colonel goes around their former battleground and finds his robotic suit, which still has his remains inside. Laak notices everything that is happening and promptly uses the voice transmitter he has around his neck to get in touch with his father. After hearing this, Jake advises Laak to avoid them and silently depart the area. Then, in order to make sure their children are safe, he and Neytiri flight toward the jungle. Sadly, the humans catch Laak and his siblings when they attempt to flee. When the Colonel examines their fingers more closely, he discovers that they are his bitter rivals' kids. Neytiri and Jake show up at that precise moment and start attacking the troops. The most of their kids are successfully set free, but Spider is not. Unfortunately, the cruel humans take the boy away. Later, when the Colonel asks Spider his name, he recognizes him as his son right away. Jake approaches his wife in Amaticaya and advises that they leave the area and travel to the east coast. He worries that Spider will tell the Colonel and his men where they are. Jake also warns Neytiri that unless he joins the tribe, humans will continue to attack them because it was him who originally killed Colonel Quaritch. Neytiri does not want to leave her lovely house, but she is aware that what her husband says is accurate. She agrees to move with him as a result. General Ardmore, on the other hand, treats Spider cruelly by putting him in a revolving machine. He makes several unsuccessful attempts to get the boy to provide crucial information. Spider simply won't budge, since he is too devoted to his Na'vi parents. The Colonel stops the spinning machine right away because he unexpectedly cannot see his son in this condition. He then goes up to the general and promises to deal with Spider in his own way. Later, in a different room, he runs into the youngster and tells him that he's not a nasty person. He also reveals that he is there to return him to Earth. Because of this, Spider decides to give him the information he requests in the end. The following clip shows Jake and his family flying out in their Scouts from their native home. They finally land at Metkaina, where another Na'vi tribe resides, after several days of flight. Surprisingly, the local Navis are pale in color and favor staying in the water. They begin making fun of Jake and his crew when they come across them. Tanauari, the tribe's leader, and his wife soon make their way there. He expresses skepticism and claims that Jake and his family are unprepared to survive in the ocean. Jake assures them that they will quickly adjust to the environment, but he is desperately trying to save his family. Then he describes how some humans are pursuing him. When Tanauari learns this, she at last consents to let them stay and offers them a place to stay. Additionally, he asks his kids to teach Jake's kids how to swim and use their unique aquatic critters. As requested, the youngsters of Tanauari take their new acquaintances to the seashore and begin teaching them the fundamentals. Meanwhile, Laak, who is always up to no good, tries to make contact with a marine creature but slips and falls into the ocean. When they notice him, Tanauari's kids begin to laugh. The girl, Kiri, may be seen lurking deep inside the ocean as this is all going on. She has surprisingly acclimated well to the environment and can even manage some marine life. The next day, Anang, Tanauari's son, and his pals approach Kiri as she is practicing underwater meditation and begin calling her a weirdo. As a result, Laak shows up and strikes Anang. As the clan chief's son, Jake later demands that his son go and apologize to Anang after learning about the incident. Laak reluctantly agrees and apologizes. Even if Anang pardons him in front of others, he is still bitter inside. So, under the guise of swimming, he takes Laak to a predetermined spot in order to teach him a lesson. Laak had no idea that the area is home to hazardous sea creatures. Later, as Laak is fishing, a big animal swims briskly at him. Fearful and terrified, Laak searches for assistance but is unable to locate anyone. But just then, a huge beast by the name of Payakan steps in to save the day. With the aid of its large head, it quickly dispatches the predator. In this passage, we learn that Payakan is a Tulkun, a tranquil and wise being. The Metkaina consider the thousands of Tulkuns in the water to be their spiritual kin. The biggest and most powerful of them all is Payakan. Payakan rescues Laak in the interim and brings him to the surface. The latter also assists the monster by removing some harpoons that were ostensibly inflicting pain on it. The two develop a lovely friendship as a result of this. Later, when Laak arrives on land, Tanauari summons him. The strict boss wants Anang to apologize after learning about his son's misdeeds. The unselfish Laak, however, denies involvement from Anang and takes responsibility for his deeds. This helps Anang realize that the new Navis are actually not all that horrible. After some time has passed, Laak rejoins his brother and friends and shares the story of how Payakan saved his life. To his amazement, no one takes him seriously. Instead, they make it known that Payakan is a murderer, which is why the other Tulkuns have abandoned it. Spider, on the other hand, informs the colonel about some aspects of Na'vi culture before taking him to Hallelujah Mountain to choose a scout. The colonel stumbles at first, but quickly learns how to fly it and does so. He soon learns where Jake might be, too, and gathers his army and marches for the Metkaina Reef. When he gets there, he approaches some water Navis and asks whether they know Jake. The bad humans kill one of the Navis and set their homes on fire when the Navis shout no. The Navis maintain their position in the face of this. With no other alternatives left, the colonel orders his squad to pursue Plan B. He wants to kill many Tulkuns right now in the hopes that it will eventually bring Jake out. Killing them has yet another benefit, though. The Tulkuns possess a priceless liquid in their brains that can lengthen life. A liter of this liquid will cost millions of dollars here on Earth. A few hunters soon begin searching for the sea monsters. They hit them with many trackers, knocking them out. A mother named Tulkun is brutally murdered while her children lie beside her in disbelief in a tragic moment. The trackers are still there inside the Tulkuns after the humans eventually depart. The Metkaina feel enraged upon learning that their comrades are being murdered and choose to confront the assailants. Jake calms them down by pointing out that they must first tell the Tulkuns about the trackers. The only way they can stop another strike is by doing this. When Laak learns this, he immediately heads over to tell his closest friend Payakan. He is joined by Anang and a few more locals. They ultimately run into Payakan and are ready to remove the tracker from him. The colonel and his hunting party, however, arrive in their whale ship just then. Laak contacts with his father and tells him about them after witnessing them. He and his friends also succeed in removing the tracker from Payakan's body just in time. They then dive under the sea to conceal themselves while the colonel's team begins to look for them. Jake approaches Tanauari in the meantime and alerts him of the disappearance of their children. The latter is alarmed, and he immediately issues an order for his people to be ready for battle. As soon as everyone has their weapons, they all move toward the fight area, including Jake and Neytiri. The colonel, on the other hand, gives the go-ahead for his crew to attack the Tulkans and search for Jake's kids. They finally locate Kiri and Tuck after much searching, and they catch them in a net. Layak makes an effort to rip the net, but instead finds himself being pushed toward the whale ship by it. They are handcuffed to the ship's railing as soon as the colonel shows up. He then removes the collar transmitter off of Layak and begs Jake to give up so that his kids are protected. Without any other choices, Jake consents to his demands. At the same time, Payakan decides to save his best friend Layak after seeing him shackled to the deck. He leaps onto the deck in a dangerous maneuver and begins to manipulate the enormous fins. This destroys the ship and kills a large number of soldiers. Jake and the Metkayina attack the colonel and his soldiers while the colonel is distracted by this. They want to protect their kids, but they also want to get even. In the meantime, Spider destroys the whale ship's controller, causing it to crash against some rocks and fill with water. To free Layak, Tuck, and Kiri, Jake and his oldest son Neytiri quickly climb the deck. They then give the kids the go-ahead to head back to safety, but Layak objects. Instead, he makes the choice to protect Spider, his adopted brother. He is joined by Neytiri, and after some looking about, they come across Spider. The colonel notices as they prepare to depart the ship and starts firing. Unfortunately, one of the bullets hits Neytiri, who suffers serious injuries. He is promptly taken to their mother on the coast by Layak and Spider, but he dies from massive blood loss. Neytiri begins to sob and wail inconsolably as she witnesses the death of her son in before of her eyes. The evil colonel uses his scound to grab Kiri and Tuck in the meantime. He later gets in touch with Jake and lets Jake know that he is with both of his daughters. Jake manages to calm Neytiri down after learning this knowledge and convinces her to work with him to save their daughters. The latter complies, and furious, she calls her scound, grabs her bow, and shoots her arrows towards the ship. As soon as Jake gets close to the ship, he sets off an explosion that kills the colonel's soldiers. Neytiri also shows up and begins shooting arrows at the remaining people, instantly murdering them. Jake rescues his young daughter Tuck in the meantime, but the colonel also arrives at the same time. Kiri is being held at knife point by him. Then, after threatening Jake, the latter reluctantly drops his weapons. In the interim, a vindictive Neytiri kidnaps Spider and professes her intention to kill him. The colonel initially says that he is unrelated to Spider, but once Neytiri makes a tiny cut in the boy's chest, he departs from Kiri. Neytiri and her family then get ready to leave, but the colonel warns that he will hunt down and kill Jake once more. Later, Jake comes to the conclusion that in order to live peacefully, the colonel must be killed. He therefore goes back to the battleground. This time, the bitter adversaries engage in a traditional fist battle. The two go against one another stride for stride in this tough race. But in the end, Jake, our hero, triumphs. He succeeds in encircling the colonel's neck with his arms and rendering him unconscious. Jake lets him drown in the water because he believes he is already dead. Unfortunately, he also finds it difficult to breathe and begins to sink. However, Layak saves him at the same moment and returns him to the surface. Later on, Payakan drags the entire family to the shore. Spider, on the other hand, also rescues his biological father by pulling him out of the sea. Spider, however, refuses to leave the facility with the colonel and goes back to his biological family. In the last scene, Neytiri's body is buried by Jake's family and the entire Metkayina tribe at the bottom of the sea, where the lights tubes welcome him as their own. Jake realizes he is in heaven with their gods as the film comes to a close as he recalls his fondest memories of his older son.